Everybody's hung up on these cheap mortgages and how that's going to protect everybody from a massive crash in housing. But what you don't know is these HELOCs, these home equity loans, these teaser rates, they're everywhere. The pool loans, the secondary line of credit that isn't 3%, that's behind the 3% mortgage, is the one that forecloses and wipes everybody out and ends up creating the housing market tipping of dominoes. Nobody's talking about it, but this particular point is huge. Folks, today I'm going to unearth some very key data points that nobody's talking about that are absolutely critical as we head into the fall season, as the housing market at large nationally starts its descent once again, just like it did last fall, when here in Florida we lost 13% of our housing equity. $75,000 disappeared of equity on the average price home across this state. And folks, I'm going to show you today that it was sheer luck that brought this housing market, particularly nationwide, including Florida, out of that dip and miraculously brought it back through the spring. But folks, we're starting to see that spiraling taking place. There's some key data points right now that we're starting to see recessions anchoring even tighter. And the factors that brought back the housing market after it literally dove 13% overnight, we could possibly see 13% and more going into fall 2023. You're gonna see hundreds of thousands of dollars, single homes and price reductions across the state. 2 months time, drop in price, 10, 20%. I'm gonna give you the straight facts, the data, you can decide what you're gonna do with it. And as always, this is not investment advice. You should never decide whether you buy or sell your most expensive asset that you own based on someone's entertainment value on YouTube. But you should pay close attention to the data because undoubtedly what I'm going to share with you will affect you in a big way, whether you're sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy or you own a home already. Pay close attention. Having said all that, and knowing that I am a capitalist at heart and I have 7 mouths to feed in my household, I prefer not to do copious amounts of research, editing, and providing all this great content to you for free. So you know what to do. If you would, smash the thing and drop some comments in the thing. It'll help me a ton, but let's get on to the data. All right, folks, obviously the greater headline is buyers have left the building. The actual demand to purchase homes is plummeted. So the most recent Mortgage Bankers Association survey, you can see out here to the far right, you have to go way back here to the mid 90s to even find a period of time when borrowers to buy houses visit lenders no more. You've seen home affordability go so ridiculously out of range that buyers are done. Now, folks, this is a consistent straight line path. This is 7 straight surveys. They're going lower and lower. And the interesting part about this is, folks, you have demand even lower than back here when the market crashed down and you started to bottom in 2011. People weren't getting mortgage applications then, but it's even worse now. So buyers have, for all intents and purposes, said, I'm out. This is too much and I'm done. Now, one of the other things that I want to show you is promulgated from this is look at the price reduction volume across the country. Last week, 36% of all listings took a price reduction, folks. That is a big number, 1 out of 3. When you start to see 35, 40, 45% of price reductions, okay, this is a sign that you are going to see a dramatic pullback in price. Every area is different. Some areas are seeing a severe shift. So Austin has got a 59% volume. 60% of the homes there have taken the price down in order to get out of the marketplace. Boise, 53%. Salt Lake City, 50%. Phoenix, 46%. Houston, 43%. So any of these particular marketplaces that have this kind of volume, you're seeing people hit the market, then you're seeing sellers competing with each other. And in order to get out of the house next, because they understand buyers are not buying houses, the prices jump and they jump much faster. Let me show you something that I saw here in Florida. Look at this property. This is a property here in one of the most popular neighborhoods in Central Florida. It's a big, beautiful house. And note, it's sitting on an island. That's right. You can actually buy a house in the gator-ridden lakes of Florida, and you can have your home sitting right off of that water on a particular island that has ponds inside of the island here in Florida. Now, this particular community, extraordinarily popular. Over the past 2 to 3 years, you could name your price and sell your home. But that's not the case anymore. Look at this particular property. You can see down here where my cursor is, July 14th, this property was listed for $2.175. It's just inside of $2.2 million. That property was reduced a month later by 9.2%. So almost $200,000 or $200,000 actually taken off the price to $1,975. And then today, presto, I get another update that this beautiful home on a prestigious, hard to find location where you can be staring out your breakfast window at this beautiful lake, take your boat right to your back dock. This property is taking another price reduction. 1.795. Folks, if you're not keeping track, that's like 19% difference in what they thought they were going to sell the home for and where they are today. And as it stands, obviously they just reduced the price this morning, but that property remains unsold. And folks, this is just the story all across the market. A lot of what the news is built upon, you're going to know this in a second, is not caught up with actual real-time situation that we're seeing in the marketplace. The news is oftentimes looking at last month or 2 months ago data. They're looking backwards and they're often not seeing what's going on in real terms. As we see buyers shudder, we're seeing a lot of other news that's pointing to some price troubles rippling through the US in real time. Check this out. Home purchase cancellations are above 15% for the second straight month. CNBC just reported this week. They go through the process that, hey, look, people are going under contract, then they have sticker shock, or they figure out what the mortgage is going to be, or they feel like, oh my gosh, something's going on in the market, I want out, and then they're gone. And then sellers who get this buy, right? You pick up a buyer, you throw your house on the market, this buyer comes and bites, and all of a sudden they bail. The sellers are in shock, right? Because most of the sellers in the marketplace, they're going on the market and they're listing their properties incredibly high. They're in big numbers and they think, hey, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to get out of this house with no problem. The sellers that are on the market, on the other hand, already know everybody and their brother are reducing. And the sellers that are sitting on the sidelines that haven't gotten in the market yet think they're still the king. And they're like, I'm going to ask whatever I want. How many cash buyers will I have when I hit the market? Let me count the ways. They don't realize that things have absolutely shifted in the last 2 or 3 months. The climate's completely different. But cold, harsh reality sets in when the first buyer arrives and says, see you later, I'm out. Take a look at this, folks. Another misprinted article. It says property views have remained above pre-pandemic levels in 2023 due to inventory scarcity. Okay, so here it is. You've got all these views taking place on the market. You can see right here, look at 2022, interest rates started to climb way back here and people just felt disinterested. So look where we have shopping. The volume of shoppers is pre-pandemic levels. So where it was before, we're back there again. Yet, we have cancellations at record highs. Buyers are shopping. Like, this is realtor.com view data. They're seeing people on their website, but it's not translating to people going and qualifying for a mortgage and actually entering the housing market. So buyers are actually window shopping, but they're not actually walking into the store to purchase anything. Go figure. Now let's talk about builders. Let's talk about the supply constraints that we supposedly have across the market. That is the ultimate reason home prices have stayed so high. Look at this. Housing starts unexpectedly plummet to lowest level since 2020. Housing starts drop. Now, by the way, again, the article says this is unexpected. It goes further to say that we were on a pace. We were supposed to do 1.44 million units. We are now tracking towards 1.28, really well short of what we're going to produce. But the reality is you've got builders. Builders can't afford to build a house and not sell it. The builders are the same folks who have been using all kinds of creative means of getting buyers into these houses for the last 6 to 8 months. One of the things I reported earlier is the fact that builders have been using all kinds of teaser rates. They've been allowing buyers to get into a reduced rate 1, 2, 3 years earlier at a lower teaser rate that will later adjust to a much higher rate. And the reality of kind of what we've been looking at is the fact that, when a builder provides that, that's kind of like a price reduction because it costs these builders $10,000, $15,000 to provide that kind of incentive to a borrower. But the real damage is if we start to go into an economic down cycle, what's the economic implication of having this property, possibly your wages are going down as a borrower and a homeowner, but then this interest rate you've had goes up. And all the while, we're also seeing reports of people borrowing even more. So on the way to that interest rate adjustment, they've added home equity lines of credit. They've added additional second mortgages, things of that nature with higher interest debt. And those tend to bury the borrower all at the same time. Builders themselves, if they stop building houses, folks, if they stop applying for permits, if they stop putting sticks in the ground, the builders know we can't get hung up on these things. We can't build houses we can't sell. There's a transfer in builder sentiment for wanting to actually build more and expand the market. Ultimately, too, that creates layoffs. There's a lot of construction workers that are now going to be put out of business as this starts to take place, and that's going to affect the economy at large as well.
You're right. Buyer demand is low, but supply is even lower, and that's keeping prices elevated. We did see a bit of a pullback this summer. So prices dipped on a year-over-year basis in June and July in our data. But in August, they were back up compared to a year ago, and other measures are sort of moving similarly. Prices are roughly staying flat at recent highs despite high mortgage rates. And that's creating some affordability challenges for buyers, keeping demand low, but not as low as supply.
This is the other thing I take issue with, is all over the news, pundits are saying house prices are higher. If you look at housing prices on a recent basis, month to month, meaning if you look back 2 or 3 months in the marketplace you're in, I'll show you Florida. The same happens if you look at the national data. It is dive bombing, okay? It literally is going from the peak summer, June, July, and Florida particularly is gone, practically vertical, okay? It's just like, it's diving again. It's lost like 4% in a matter of 60 days. So here's the deal. The pundits love to say that we're higher or prices are up based on here versus a year ago, okay? But if you actually look at the data trend and where we are right now, it's a different story. Now, look at this. So we had a peak here in Florida, May of 2023. We peaked an average price of $601,000. But look at the data. Is this a healthy market shift? From May to July, you had a $25,000, $26,000 difference in average price. It's like 4 to 5% range shift. Now, you gotta understand, folks, May, June, July are peak season for us, okay? So in Florida, this is aseasonal. This is antithesis of normal for our marketplace. So for them to look at this data point right here in July and say prices are rising, does that look like prices are rising, folks? But you know what they're saying that from? Because they're saying July is $575,000 and July back here was $562,000. So because this data point here is higher than this one back here, prices are rising. But that's not true. And the reality is, whenever you start to see prices falling from May in Florida, that again is an anomaly. If you actually look at a month over month data point as opposed to a year over year data point, you're told a completely different story. And this is the same on the national level. And the greater point I want to make about what is happening right now, folks, is this right here. This is something that if you follow my channel for a minute, I've already hammered on. Last summer, we had this huge drop off in price, okay? So in Florida, the average price was actually back here. Midsummer, it was right around 601, right where it was May this year. And then we had this collapse because what took place last year, Jerome Powell started raising interest rates, the mortgage market responded, the bond market responded, rates shot up in housing, and all of a sudden, 7, 7.25, all that scared everybody. Well, folks, listen, since July, you have the highest sustained 7+ interest rates we've had in 20 years. When you start seeing data points where I showed you people are applying even less than they ever have, that's because you're having a sustained 7 to 7.5 interest rate. That's for excellent credit for a 30-year fixed. You got to understand, people are getting 8 and 9 and 9.5% interest rates for 30-year fixed if they want to get a second home, a vacation home, things of that nature. Depending on where their credit is, there's going to be add-ons, so the interest rate will be even higher. So all that freezes the market. But we've now had a punishing cost structure and credit now than we even did last year. Folks, here's the point. I just showed you CNBC where they're sitting there on cable news saying, hey, you know what? Inventory is really low. And because of that, we're seeing prices are on the rise and blah, blah, blah. That's not true. If you look at last week, we had a whole lot of people reducing their prices. To give you an idea, folks, when you see 36, like plus 35% is a sign the market is soft, okay? When you say, Jared, what do we usually see in the market? Maybe 20%? 19, 18% of sellers reduce price in a single week across the entire nation, 20, 22%, something like that. That's common. That's healthy. 35, 40%, 50% in some of these markets, that is price softening. And I just showed you the data. The buyers are watching the market. They're looking at realtor.com. They're not going to the lender and borrowing any money. They're like watching all these sellers set their houses on fire from a price standpoint. And they're waiting like, hey, when you guys burn down that price low enough, we might come in and bail you out. But as of right now, we're out of the game. And I say that to say this too. I didn't mention, but the more data I review on lenders in the marketplace right now, more and more updates are coming out that lenders are tightening their credit. If you have great credit, a good down payment, they're making it even harder. Credit is getting tighter and tighter, and lenders, just like builders are building less, lenders seem to be hedging for something. What is the something that we're talking about? What's coming? Folks, take a look at this red line for a second. This right here represents housing prices. And the ultimate point I need to talk to you about is if the prices get hammered this fall, do they stay in trouble in the spring? That's the ultimate question. Because see, folks, Florida and the nation at large last year started to tailspin into what would be a crash. But it pulled out in January, and it pulled out for two reasons. I'm going to show you exactly what those are. The ultimate question here for the rest of this discussion I need to have with you is what prevents the marketplace from entering that spiral, the death spiral of price. And then when January and February comes, or whatever month. So if we're looking at the seasonal shift that gave the support to the market to come back last year, what are the factors that created that and what's going to make it change? So take a look at this. Every year you can see there's somewhat of a seasonal shift where you can see right here, see this between 18 and 19 where my cursor is? It pitches down, but then it spirals up to where it peaks higher than prior year. See that? Comes down, spirals up, comes down, spirals up. It spiked super high last year, and it's particularly this run up right here. It was the end of 2021 and all the way in 2022. Interest rates hit the brakes, and this was a vertical drop, folks. And what happened next was it pulled and kind of got some juice to come out of it, but it didn't climb up to here. You know what I'm saying? Like on a typical year, it would go down and would come back up to here. But it went, and it's going right back into the trenches again. The other thing I want to make particularly a point of in the seasonality of the US marketplace with relation to this year, okay? This downtrend started earlier, okay? So seasonally, we should still be going here, 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 and then pitching down. So if you look at the seasonality of all this, these pitches, you see this pitching down, this is more towards the end of the year. It's like September, October range, where you start to see the first couple months of softening. We're having it during peak season where all these buyers are canceling. And at the same time, buyers are still out here shopping on the internet as much as they were before, but they're not actually, again, going to a lender. Now, what are the two factors that brought the housing market back this year? Interest rates, unemployment. But here's the deal. Follow me on this. Interest rates going into December, coming into January, that supposedly were the factor in bringing the market back and firing the buyers back up, was that the interest rates were around 7%, 6.75, 7%, something like that in the 30-year. They dropped to 6.5. They dropped to 6.25, 6, right around 6, the lowest over 2 months. But they really were mid sixes. Do we believe that alone, that big juice of it's not 7.25, it's 6.5, and that's so much better, and that's low enough for me to get in the market? Was that what it was? That's not what it is to me. Let me show you what I really think it is. Look at this, folks. This in front of you is the graph of unemployment rate in Florida. Okay. So you can see as we were coming out of 2021, going into 2022, look at this. Look where unemployment was going. When you see unemployment going to record lows, okay? When I say record lows, this line where my cursor is right here at the 5% mark up here, that's our average. That's where our state is in normal, healthy times. As we had the Fed chairman last year jacking up the rates middle of the year, you still had unemployment going sliding down. The Fed's raising interest rates to slow the economy down and create higher unemployment. But folks, look what's taking place. You can see here on the graph that we didn't even bottom on unemployment until 3 months ago. So here it is, January, we go towards March, April, May, we're at 2.6%, which is like, look at Florida, folks, that we're never sitting at 2.6%. And if we ever hit 2.6, look what happens afterwards. It springs back the opposite direction, goes and does something completely different, okay? So look what's happened the last 2 months. The last 2 months, along with all the buyers going away and avoiding the lender, we're seeing unemployment tick up in Florida. It hit a bottom and now it's going up. The interesting thing that I need to tell you folks about why this is super crucial, in Florida, our unemployment rate doesn't run like a stock ticker. It doesn't bounce up and then come back down and go back up. It runs in continuity. So when it goes down and starts sloping, it goes down. When it hits a bottom, it goes down. It smooths out and then it goes up the other way. And when it goes up, it starts a climb and it doesn't stop climbing. Look at this. Let me further illustrate. You see it. Look at the history of time. It goes down, comes back up. Slides down, hits a bottom, comes back up. The other important point, folks, that you need to understand is unemployment is now going against the housing market. And here's why. If I were to overlay mortgage delinquency over time, the history of mortgage delinquency against all of the unemployment rate hikes, times when people were getting laid off, the higher unemployment goes, mortgage defaults go with it. Let me say that again. When unemployment goes up, mortgage defaults historically climb with unemployment. Now be careful, you're going to draw the same logical conclusions that pundits like to draw. The pundits will get online and they'll say, well, you know what? If unemployment goes up, mortgages are going to default. And then they try to calculate how many people are going to lose their jobs so they can calculate how many houses are going to go sideways. But the Philadelphia Fed did a study and it blew my mind this week when I read it. The Philadelphia Federal Reserve hired 2 quantitative analysts. These 2 analysts researched all mortgage defaults that they had access to, and they looked at unemployment versus employed borrowers who fell behind in their defaults and actually got into loan trouble. Do you know what they found was the difference between an employed person and an unemployed person in terms of ability to go behind on their mortgage as a percentage adjusted? 3%. There's virtually no difference in the amount of people who are unemployed and the people that are employed when it comes to unemployment going up, mortgage defaults going up. Both parties are on the ride. Now, why is that? That's the interesting thing you have to think about, and you'll start to figure out what really happens when unemployment goes up. What other things happen when unemployment goes up? Well, you have to think about why it happens. Unemployment goes up when the cost of employment is so untenable they can't keep an employee, right? No brainer. People get laid off. Now there's more people wanting the same job. So the same job is in demand and the prices come back down. Wages come back down. People are then paid less because they compete for the same job that they had before, but now the employer doesn't have to pay so much, and then the prices of everything falls. That's what happens. That's why the Fed raises rates in order essentially reverses inflation. It causes recession, and then people get laid off. But here's what happens. Mortgage defaults go up because in a period of high unemployment, people that could afford their house when they were at record high wages can no longer afford them. Are you tracking with what I'm saying? That means people that are employed or that regain a position somewhere else, when they have to reapply for some new position that's similar to their job path, they're just making less money. Well, we have plenty of data that even though interest rates were 3%, we know that people were borrowing to the max of their debt to income ratio. That means people were borrowing at the very top of what they can afford based on the current amount of money they're making. Enter in the fact that we have builders giving teaser rates. enter in the fact that we have a record high home affordability. So this blows up all these people from the 1980s, right? We have everybody has a friend that says, back in 1983, my interest rate was 13.75%. Compared to that, these interest rates are quite cheap. Well, the reality is in 1983, you were financing for your home 2 times your income for a year. So 2x your earnings to buy a house. People today got a 3% rate, but they were buying a house at 10x their earnings. Big difference, folks. The reality is everything costs way more. We're just gimmicking the interest rate, and then everybody thinks the housing market can't go sideways because everybody's got 3% interest. Let me tell you another thing how the housing market goes sideways. I've spoken to multiple people this week who are in foreclosure. Now, they're not in foreclosure on their low 3% interest rate loan. They have a 3% interest rate loan, but they're in foreclosure. You know what they're in foreclosure to? The second home equity line of credit that they borrowed behind their first mortgage. They're in foreclosure to a private money mortgage that they took in debt because their house is worth way more. Now, do they have equity? Yes, they do. But you know what? They're sitting there not doing anything about the foreclosure because in their heads, they've told themselves, I'm current on my first mortgage, my 3% first mortgage. You know what happens in a foreclosure? The HELOC is going to take the house to foreclosure. The home equity line of credit is going to foreclose and wipe out the homeowner and everything beneath the HELOC, everything on the deed. If there's a pool loan and a third mortgage or whatever, all that gets wiped off, including the homeowner. And then that bank can take that home to market, sell it at a reasonable price because the house has equity. This is what happens, folks. In a downturn economy, recession shapes, and employed and unemployed alike get pressured and prices change. And we're going right into the same economic cycle that we had last fall. So last fall, this time, it's way worse. Why? Because Redfin last month just printed, we have record high housing costs. It has never been more expensive than now to go out and try and buy a house. And that's why buyers have quit. So in this season of cycle, we have this real situation where buyers have said, until it gets cheaper, I'm out. True pullback, lower buyer involvement than any point since 1995. So last year, what we had happen in the fall, I say that last year wasn't as bad because there was some psychological issues going on last year, I think. Because remember, everybody was used to 3%. Then all of a sudden, the Fed does some things. They raise some rates. Now they're seeing 7% for the first time. And people are standing around going, is this the end? Like, is the market over? Are we in real trouble? Everybody freaked out. This was the first time we'd seen anything like that. So the psychology softened the market. This year, it's pure intellect, buyers focusing, eyes wide open, still saying, I'm out and I'm not participating. And sellers that aren't on the same page, you're going to get clobbered because you don't know that in the market we're in right now, time is not your friend. Time is going to eviscerate any equity you have over the next 4 or 5 months. And if you get the price reduced quickly, get out as soon as you can. If you have to sell now, that's your best hope to get as much as you can, because months later, if the market shifts 6, 7, 8%, you're talking could be a difference of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in what the buyer's gonna be interested in paying on your house at that point over just taking some shots now. Maybe I'm selling less, 10 grand less than I want to, but I'm getting out. Get it done. Don't cut corners. Now's not the time for that. If you've got to sell, that's just the way it is. But that's it, folks. I appreciate you watching this update. I got some crazy updates for next week. Stay tuned to the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you on the next one.